Hey, what's up, C-Maniac Nation? C-Man finally has a laptop, and that means it's time to bring you some really, really old content. I had a lot of stuff back in January that I was working on when my laptop got broken because I'm not smart. My new laptop then got lost in transit for a while. It finally has arrived. I am back, and like I said, I've got some things that I want you guys to check out. That we're back in January, so don't mind the brighter blonde hair, and don't mind the fact that I'm coming off COVID and talking about things that are from way in the past. So without further ado, take it away, Paris Seaman!
Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sitdown. I tell you, man, I feel like I've almost kicked this whole COVID thing, man. Like, I think the COVID portion of this sickness is gone, and now I'm just kind of like trying to knock the remains off the tires. But I'm telling you, I'm feeling pretty good today. I might actually venture out into the world. But before I go and do things like that, I've got a TV show I want to talk to you guys about. I know I don't talk a lot of TV, it's mostly movies, but I do consume a lot of TV. I think the reason I don't necessarily talk about it quite often is like, that's my outlet and escape, right? Like sometimes you just want things you can watch and not have to sit down and talk about. And usually for me, that's television shows, because I'll just get into like a binge mode and, you know, being sick with the COVID, just in bed for a while. That there were, you know, a lot of binging things going on. So besides movies that we talked about, there were a lot of things I binged, and there's this one that I honestly didn't binge during my COVID stretch, although I did dip my toe into a little bit of a rewatch because it was so damn good. But over Christmas, right before the COVID, my uncle had asked me if I had watched this, and I said, oh my god, yes, I haven't talked to anybody about this show. And it brought me right back to watching the show going, I should talk about this, because this is a show that people need to watch. This is a show that needs to be consumed, and this is a show that I have to have more seasons for. I believe their goal is to do 3 to 4 more seasons possibly, and then a potential spin-off. But this animated show, and you know me, I love me some animation, this did things I didn't know that I would ever see in animation. And it's so cool to look at visually, while the story might be one of the best stories of the whole entire year. What are we talking about? Why don't you pull up a chair, take a seat. We are getting ready to dive in, spoiler-free, into Netflix's Blue Eye Samurai. What a freaking phenomenal show this was. Now, I'll tell you right now, I'm a sucker when it comes to things like samurai or martial arts combat. I've been dipping my toe a little bit more this past year into anime. I've stumbled into Baki Hanma, 2 individual Netflix shows that spun out from an anime that had happened, I think, back in the early 2000s or whatever. But very much at the front and center of that animated show is all this different martial arts stuff. And I love all of those things. So when I saw that this show was going to be dealing with a samurai in animation, and then I saw a clip of what that animation was doing, I knew I was going to have to push play on this one, but I never expected to have a story that impacted me so directly. And like, you just, it was one of those, it's been a while since I've had a show where it's like, I just have to push binge. It's not like, not that I want to push play on the next one, I have to push play on the next one. I blew through this show because it was so good. And it honestly starts with series lead director. I believe I'm getting these right. Yeah, Jane Wu, I believe, is the person I saw in one of the behind the scenes things. She's one of the directors. She comes from a martial arts background. And in a little interview bit, she had said, anytime that I do something that has martial arts in it, I'll half-ass it. Like, it has to be 100% what it is, or I don't do it. And when you get into the world of animation, obviously, it can maybe be hard or more difficult to translate those legitimate things into the realm of, you know, moving animation. So what did Jane Wu do? She called up one of her buddies that she had grown up with, you know, doing martial arts with. He's a stunt director, and brought on all of these different stunt actors to act out the action sequences that are going to be in the show. Like, it's one of these things where, if you know animation, a lot of times actors will record themselves performing the lines to give the animators things that they can put into the animation. So it's like, oh, if I'm seeing the actor do the thing, it makes it a lot easier for me to animate it because I have a point of reference. That's basically what Wu does here, where she takes all the action sequences, maps them out in real space with real people. Like, the behind the scenes footage looked like you were on a movie set, you know what I mean? And they put the dots on some of the actors for certain things. There are other things on their clothing and stuff that I think helped in getting the skeletons to move correctly. But then every action samurai scene in the show, she maps out and records like a film. So now you have this live action interpretation of what she wants in the show. And the animators take those skeletons and take those camera angles and cuts. Dude, you play these things side by side. Netflix does it behind the scenes on the show. And they put them side by side. They're identical. And it makes the animation pop in a way where I don't think I've ever seen animation move like this. Like, the camera work for the animation, the way the people are moving, the actual way that they're doing everything felt so real. And then you see that behind the scenes where it's like, yeah, they did it for real and then made the animation match. It's wild. And it's not just the choreographed movements, which are intricate. Like, some of the fight sequences in this are like top level, like live action type choreography being done in animation. But the thing I think that kicked even more was the camera. The way the camera moves in this show. I didn't know you could do stuff like that in animation, you know, like this flat like it's 2D animation, but it's got like 3D elements to it in the way that it moves and the way the camera moves and how things operate in space. And having all of that mapped out in live action, I think, is what elevated all of that stuff. But then the real magic sauce to this show, right? Because like I said, you know, I love just binging specifically animated television all the time. I love adult cartoons. And, you know, it's one of those where a lot of times a show like this could be worth it just for the execution on the action and how great the choreography is in all of those sequences. Like, one of those things where I never would have imagined, like, yeah, you'd have to map that choreography out in real space to make it look right, you know, if you wanted it to be authentic. But the magic here, right? Like, that gets me to the show. Here's my ticket. Pay for my admission, man. I'm in. What makes you stay, what makes you want more, is the story. And the story here, coming to us from Michael Green and Amber Nozumi, our creators, is just one that you can't take your eyes off of it. You know, it's a story about acceptance, about making your own path and sticking true to your guns. A story about revenge and sacrifice and other revenge. Like, there's so many moving pieces and things that are going on that impact our main character, Mizu, who's voiced by Maya Erskine. And that's the thing that I think also really makes this show pop. You got a really legitimate cast here that does great work, but then the story of this samurai being a woman was so fascinating. When I was talking to my uncle, he didn't realize that the samurai was a woman. I picked up on that right away. Like, when I saw the trailer, I was like, all right, man, you got like a female samurai, which isn't a thing, pretending to be a dude so she can kind of make her way and get this revenge. You know, there's something that happens to her family and to her in particular. And it's not just like the revenge for her family, but also what things meant for her. This is a story that takes place in feudal Japan when the borders were shut. There was nobody allowed in Japan but Japanese people, and then 4 white dudes. And back in that time, if you were a mixed breed, you were looked at as like a demon. You know what I mean? Like, this little girl gets born and she's got blue eyes. That means white man's seed is in there. Demon. And being an outcast, like, it's her going through all of these things to prove herself. Like, I am more than just my blue eyes. We just talked yesterday about American Fiction, right? And being confined to a box when you are more than that box. That exists for Mizu throughout the whole thing, and so much of it has to do with her eyes. She wears these orange sunglasses so you can't really tell her eyes are blue when she's moving around. And then it's the way that she was brought up, where she ended up and got into samurai type stuff. It's then her proving that, like, even though I'm a woman, I can still do so much more than y'all. And how all of that ties in to the overall main story plot, which is her trying to find revenge by hunting down these 4 white men and killing all of them, because one of them is responsible for bringing her into the world, and because of that man, her life has been a living hell. And she is out to just kind of take them all out one by one. And, you have this big red-haired behemoth of a white dude that is played by Kenneth Branagh. And Fowler is, he's bad, man. And he is a worthy villain to build to. And that's one of the things that I love that we get from Green and Nozomi, is that they are taking you and building Mizu up. It's one of these, like, when we first meet Mizu, she's a badass. I ain't messing around with Mizu. But then as she gets thrown into situations where she is overly confident and gets down a peg or two, watching how she reacts and responds to that and never stops. Like, this woman gets beat to shit in this show, man, and she will not stop, even if her body won't carry her. And that's the thing that I think becomes so intriguing with this show, is while you have this goal of getting to this place for season 1, Mizu's meeting all these different people. She ends up taking on a ward who has no hands, but wants to be a samurai. This character, Ringo, played by Masaoka. Wonderful stuff. Everything that Ringo stands for, and how he centers Mizu and brings her back when she's getting too outlandish, is wonderful. There's this guy, Taigen, who's tied into the overall story, right? Like, is a kid that grew up in the same town as Mizu, and is someone that she comes across as she's journeying and ends up having a battle with, and then that battle doesn't really end correctly. So, like, Taigen is constantly following her or attaching his story to hers, because at the end of the day, I'm gonna take you out, Mizu, when I get there. And mind you, has no idea that Mizu is a woman. So, like, that whole relationship is fascinating because it involves some of the revenge type factors. But then, because the audience knows that Mizu is a woman, and Mizu knows that Mizu is a woman, there's this interesting electricity between Taigen and Mizu. But again, is another character who comes across Mizu and you're butting heads. But there's something about this woman that gets people to come along. And like I said, his motivation is, well, I'm the one that gets to kill you, so I'm going to follow you, make sure that you don't die, so that I do get to kill you. And how that relationship evolves. The sword maker, someone that is very influential in her becoming a samurai, voiced by Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa, another legend. Like I said, this cast list is just full of really, really great actors and some straight-up legends. I mean, George Takei in here as well. But, her relationship with Seki and how Seki plays into her story and how that motivates her and leads her to different things is wonderful. Then you have Taigen's potential bride, the daughter of, like, the head of... I can't think of the words now, but he's basically like the overarching ruler at the time in this one area. Akemi, played by Brenda Song. Fascinating stuff, because what's cool is, like, while we're following Mizu's story and she's coming across all these people, occasionally some of these stories become B-line and C-line stories, and Akemi's is one of them. She is looking for Taigen. Taigen disappears after having this battle. She thinks Taigen's dead. Where her journey takes her, really, really fascinating places. But at the end of the day, like, everyone that comes across Mizu and how they influence her in what she's doing is just so much fun to watch. And you see this blending of these different storylines, and there's a lot of things going on. I mean, Akemi's storyline in particular is very sexually driven, and there's a lot more nudity and sex in the show than I thought we were gonna get. Like, I got to the first one, I was like, oh shit, all right, we're just straight up having sex in this animated world. That's fine. And again, like I've said in other things this past week that dealt with sex and nudity, if it serves a purpose, it's fine. And it's one of these things where, especially to Akemi's storyline, it does serve a major purpose, and it serves a huge purpose in the roles that women play in feudal Japan at the time. So getting to live that and go through those places, somewhere that Mizu comes in and out of, she makes these connections, and how, you get all of these different connections that Green and Noizumi are bringing together, and how you bring them all to a place at the end where you're paying off everything across the board, was just really, really fascinating and fun to watch. And then, like I said, I mean, what we get from everybody in this voice cast, whether it's George Takei, who plays Akemi's kind of like the guy who is responsible basically for raising Akemi. It's like her father, but isn't her father. You get Fowler's kind of like right-hand Asian man, Heiji Shindo, played by Randall Park. Great stuff, man. Like I love when you get a voice cast that's as committed to the performance as they would be if it was live action. That always pays off so big. And like I said, I think the ideas that came out of this that stem from live action being brought in and merged with the animation just creates a look and a visual that's extremely unique. Every single frame of this show is beautiful. And like I said, the action is phenomenal. The storylines are great. And all the characters are interesting. Like, there are people you hate that you are rooting for so hardcore toward the end of the show. And there are people that you figured would be, you down to ride with. And then you're like, man, their story went someplace I didn't like. Like, it's really cool. And then, like I said, the levels. It's almost like a video game. You get to these boss fights that increase in difficulty each time Mizu has to take one on in order for her to get to Fowler, which is the ultimate end fight. It blended together so well, and is a show that I need people to watch, need people to love, so we can get the rest of this story, because I believe this is a story that comes from actual Japanese folklore, if I remember the behind the scenes correctly, and is a story that is just, it's fascinating. And the way that they tell certain things, like there's an episode where they tell a lot of Mizu's backstory through like Japanese puppets. Like, it's a puppet show going on telling one story, but it lines up perfectly with Mizu's story. And that's the thing that I did really dig throughout the whole show, is anytime we're going backwards or we're telling other pieces of the story so that the whole picture starts to come into play while we're on this single path for Mizu, it's just really, really wonderful. And just the grit, determination, and will of a person is so present. And that's a story that I think is so easy to connect to and just allow it to take off. Like, everything here was pretty much flawless up until the finale. I was a little disappointed that the finale, I thought, was probably the flattest of the 8 episodes. And a lot of it has to do with decisions that Fowler is making. As a character, there's something going on where it's like, you didn't have to deal with any of it. Like, there was just a couple things where it was like, that feels like a stupid decision. And like I said, just kind of made the finale episode a little flat. But the first 7, all the way up here, and then 8, just comes down like a little bit. But by the time you get to the end and what they're setting up going forward, you're right back to all the way up here where I'm all in, man. You can take all my money. I'm already giving it to Netflix, so just keep on taking it. I need more of this show, because Blue Eye Samurai, man, it blew me away. And like I said, whether it's Maya Erskine, who just provides such a believability in her performance, but also a vulnerability that makes Mizu so interesting, right? Like, she has to present herself as this tough, hard-nosed man through most of her story, and she is a tough, hard-nosed man at the root of who she is. But as you start to peel those layers back and start to understand Mizu the person, seeing the female elements of her story, there's a piece that happens in part of the story with her mom that kind of shows Mizu getting to maybe have a more traditional life as a female, and how that plays out and how it plays into what's ultimately going on. Like, there's heartbreaking stuff in there, and you feel that emotion in Erskine's performance, and you feel the emotion that comes from everybody. I mean, Darren Barnett, who plays Taigen, I think is absolutely phenomenal through the whole thing. Taigen and Mizu and their story is one of the things that kept me coming back every single episode, because you were so fascinated to see how that's going to unfold, and I'm still fascinated to see how that's going to unfold. And I think that's the key to any good television show, if it's going to have a long running run, is that you have to keep bringing the people back, and it's not just about the dope action. Like, the dope action can get you to push play on every single one of these, but the need to push play, I have to have more of this show, comes from that writing and that story. And that's something that I think our creators, Michael Green and Amber Noizumi, do such an excellent job with. So let's get the C-Maniacs up, man. This is, of television that I've watched, this would fall in my top 10 easy. It's a cinematic masterpiece, man. The animation style is like stuff we've seen, but functions in ways that we've never seen 2D animation function. And it's hard to say never, because you got things like the Turtles come out this year and Across the Spider-Verse that are doing this crazy stuff in animation, but the way this animation moves and lives and breathes has a lot more real feel to it than some of the other animation that we get in the world. And that's not just the visual look that it looks real, it's how it operates. And that's the thing that I think that the director Wu does so good with, is staging all of these action sequences in live action and filming it the way that you want it to be done in animation, and how they blend that together and how they utilize 3D concepts inside of this 2D world. Like it really functions in ways that just make it so special visually to look at. You throw in the scoring during the different battle scenes or some of the personal moments. I mean, this show is rated R, right? Like, it's bloody, it's very bloody, there's nudity, there's sex, but all of those elements, the things that could turn a person away, I think are the things that enhance what's going on. And anytime we're telling a story or a part of lore that we don't have, like the transitional elements to the way things move and how you can seamlessly go from what's happening in the real world to what's going on in a fantastical story, like there's just so much wonderful animation throughout the whole thing. And like I said, every frame of this show is gorgeous. And then you have a story and performances to match the level of the animation itself. That I got to the end, this was one of the most impactful things I watched all year, man. Like, it's one of those shows, like, you come away from it and you're like, damn, man, I didn't know we could do stuff like that. And it's cool when you can do stuff like that. I loved Blue Eye Samurai, and I know I've recently said I'm trying to be a little bit more hard-nosed and when I do my scores, but outside of a little bit of a stumble in the finale episode of season 1, this thing is flawless. So I gotta go 4.5 out of 5 Sea Maniacs, man. And I'm not even gonna lie to you guys, while I'm sitting here on IMDb, I noticed something on the poster from the writer of Logan and Blade Runner 2049. Yeah, that Michael Green guy, that dude wrote those 2 movies. And I think that's something else that makes this show special. And now that I've read that, it's kind of clicking in my brain. Like, Amber Noizumi is the person who is responsible for the main chunk of writing, right? Bringing this story to Netflix, wanting to get this story done. She is like the creator who, like, this was her baby. And you throw somebody like Michael Green in there who has the background that he has in film, that writing combined with the story that Nozomi wants to tell here, I think is the thing that just pushes it above and beyond. And it is one of those things where the story, and having someone who knows how to write story around action, I think really elevates it. So what a wonderful pairing Michael Green and Amber Nozomi are to be the creators of this show. It is really dope, and I need to now go and see how they got connected and where that came from, because like I said, this is one of the most impactful TV shows I've watched all year, man. And it is one where, like, you feel so many different emotions throughout the whole thing, and it's really just a wonderful journey that's only just begun. And I can't wait to see where we go and where we end up. And again, I think having a female character front and center allows them to discuss a lot of really interesting things, specifically for Japanese women at that point in time. But then on top of that, having to be a man in that world, even though you're a woman, like, it creates this drive for Mizu that, like, she's one of these heroes that have emerged this year where I'm like, damn, man, I wish Mizu was always in my life. I'm glad I'm getting her at 37, but shit, I wish I had a story like this back in the day. So look, I love Blue Eye Samurai. 6 hours in total, a little over 6 hours in total. 8 episodes, Netflix. Can't miss it. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. And if you have seen it, I want to know what you're thinking, man. What did you think of Blue Eye Samurai? What did you think of the action? What did you think of the story, the characters, how the characters interact with each other, how the animation functions in and around all of these different things? Was the blood and the gore ever too much for you? Did you think that the sex and the nudity in the show was unnecessary or something that detracted you? Or, like me, was it something that added to the story and added to the realism of this animated world we were living in? And if you haven't seen it, have I enticed you to want to check it out? Is this a show you would watch? And if you have watched it, would you watch it again? Do you want a season 2? Anything you got, man, good, bad, indifferent, on season 1 of Blue Eye Samurai, put it down below in the comments section. I look forward to talking to you down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with C-Man anytime we're talking movies, TV, trailer reactions. You want to be here to see what we get into in 2024. You want to know what I love the most from 2023. You just want to show a little love and support because you haven't yet. Well, hey, you can do all those things by joining C-Maniac Nation, and it's super easy. You just got to jump over there, hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell if you want those alerts. Until next time, for the C-Man Cinema Sit Down, I've been the C-Man. I'm signing off. Peace.
Oh, you guys are still here. You snuck up on me. You must be looking for more of this guy. Well, I got 2 video options for you, man. Right up here and right over here. And if you want all those C-Man goodies, well, hey, come join the squad right on over there, and I'll catch you on the next one.